The iron door bolt slammed into place with a sharp metallic crack. The main entrance to the public lobby had just been locked from the inside. Maya turned around. Deputy Pike coldly slipped the remote into his pocket, then casually walked to the corner of the room and switched off the lobby surveillance camera. The red indicator light near the ceiling went dark. Phone, handbag, car keys. Put everything on the counter, Pike ordered, pulling the handcuffs from his belt. Maya did not step back. Her eyes remained fixed on the officer. By what authority are you locking the doors of a public building and seizing my property when I haven't violated any law? Sheriff Mercer emerged from the back room. He picked up Maya's phone from the counter and shoved it into a specialized signal-blocking pouch. Around here, we call photographing a secure area and questioning law enforcement a threat to county security, Mercer said in a cold, low voice. Cuff her. Have her rental car towed to the impound lot. Maya looked from Mercer to Pike, taking in every movement without giving either man the reaction they seemed to expect. Pike approached with the handcuffs open, his expression carrying the confidence of someone who believed the argument had already ended. Maya lifted her chin slightly. So this is how you want to do it. You lock a citizen inside a public building, turn off the camera, take her property without a warrant, and then put her in cuffs because she insists on knowing the law. If you're arresting me to make the questions stop, Sheriff, then say exactly that when you write your report. Mercer gave a humorless smile. You're in no position to tell me how to run my office. I'm not telling you how to run it. I'm telling you that everything you do from this point forward becomes part of what happened here. For the first time, irritation passed openly across Mercer's face. Pike stepped closer. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. Maya complied without resistance. The handcuffs closed around her wrists with 2 hard clicks. Thank you, she said quietly. Pike frowned. For what? For making the detention unambiguous. Mercer's eyes narrowed. That sentence bothered him far more than anger would have. Less than an hour earlier, the encounter had looked very different. Maya Williams had been driving through Hawthorne County in a dark blue rental sedan when she noticed a brown highway sign for a scenic overlook outside Bellhaven. She had spent most of the afternoon on 2-lane roads bordered by pine trees, low fields, and scattered farmhouses, and the chance to get out of the car for a few minutes seemed harmless enough. She pulled into the overlook, parked near a wooden barrier, and stepped into the warm Georgia air with her phone in hand. The place offered a wide view of the valley below, including a narrow county service road that curved between the trees toward several low buildings. Maya took a few photographs of the landscape. Nothing about the scene seemed unusual until she checked the last image. Near the lower edge of the frame stood a uniformed deputy beside a county vehicle. Another man, dressed in khaki work pants and a pale utility shirt, faced him. Maya had captured the exact moment the man handed the deputy a thick envelope. In the next image, the deputy was passing something back. Maya enlarged the photograph. It appeared to be a temporary access credential with county markings across the top. She looked up from the screen. The deputy had already noticed her, even from a distance. The change in his posture was obvious. The conversation with the other man stopped. His attention shifted completely toward Maya and the phone in her hand. She did not wave, confront him, or continue taking pictures. She simply locked the screen and returned to her car. There could have been an innocent explanation. County employees dealt with contractors every day. Credentials changed hands. Envelopes could contain documents rather than money. What bothered Maya was not merely what she had photographed. It was the way the deputy had looked around before accepting the envelope. She left the overlook and continued toward Bellhaven. A few miles later, a county patrol vehicle appeared behind her. It never activated its emergency lights. It did not pull alongside her or signal for her to stop. It simply followed at a measured distance as Maya drove toward town. When the speed limit dropped, Maya slowed with it. The patrol vehicle remained behind her through 2 intersections before disappearing down a side street. By then, Maya had recognized the driver. It was the deputy from the photograph. Bellhaven itself seemed peaceful enough. Brick storefronts surrounded an old courthouse square, and several pickup trucks were parked outside a diner advertising country fried steak, meatloaf, and peach cobbler. Older couples moved between shops at an unhurried pace. A man in work boots held a door for a woman carrying grocery bags. Nothing about the town suggested the confrontation, waiting a few blocks away. Maya could have kept driving. Instead, she noticed a sign directing visitors toward county administration and the Hawthorne County Sheriff's Office. She considered the photograph again. If what she had seen was legitimate, the county could explain it. If it was not, then handing the image to proper authorities seemed more responsible than uploading it somewhere and inviting strangers to make accusations. She turned into the county complex. Inside the sheriff's office, an older civilian clerk sat behind a public counter with reading glasses low on her nose and a stainless steel thermos beside the keyboard. "Good afternoon, ma'am," Maya said. "I'd like to report something I photographed outside town. I'm not sure it means anything, but I thought someone should take a look." The clerk, whose nameplate read Ellen Price, gave her a courteous nod. "Of course. Let me find a deputy for you." She had barely reached for the desk phone when a secured door opened behind her. Deputy Travis Pike entered the lobby. Maya recognized him immediately. He recognized her just as quickly. His eyes went straight to the phone. "What exactly did you photograph?" he asked. Maya kept the device in her hand. "An exchange near the overlook. You happened to be in the background." Pike's expression tightened. "Let me see it." Maya opened the photograph herself and held the screen where he could view it. Pike studied the image for several seconds. Then his demeanor changed. "That area is connected to restricted county operations. Hand me the phone." "Am I legally required to?" "I'm asking for your cooperation." Maya looked at him calmly. "That wasn't my question." Sheriff Mercer appeared from a hallway behind the counter. "What seems to be the problem?" Pike answered before Maya could. "She photographed a restricted area, and now she doesn't want to cooperate." Maya turned toward Mercer. "I came here voluntarily to report what I saw. Deputy Pike is asking me to surrender my phone. I'm asking whether he has legal authority to seize it." Mercer held out his hand. "Give him the phone. Are you seizing it as evidence?" "Yes." "Do you have a warrant?" Mercer's stare hardened. "You're making this more complicated than it needs to be." "Complicated and lawful are not opposites, Sheriff." Ellen Price stopped typing. Maya finally placed the phone on the counter. "I will allow you to preserve the photograph. I do not consent to a search of my messages, files, applications, deleted data, or any other private contents." Pike picked up the phone. "You an attorney?" Maya did not answer. Mercer studied her more carefully now. Before Maya could ask for a property receipt, Pike carried the phone through the secured door. Several minutes passed. Then several more. Maya asked Ellen whether seized property normally received an evidence number. "Yes, ma'am." "Has mine received one?" Ellen checked the computer. Her expression changed. "I don't see one yet." Maya looked toward the closed door. When Pike finally returned, he was not carrying her phone. "Where is my property?" she asked. "It's being processed." "Under what evidence number?" Pike did not answer. Maya noticed something else. The small red light above the lobby surveillance camera was still glowing. She glanced toward it, then back at Pike. "Deputy, did you access my phone after I explicitly refused consent to a search?" Pike's face went still. Mercer stepped forward. "That's enough questions." Maya looked at him. "That sounds like a request." Mercer's voice dropped. "You're about to discover the difference." A few minutes later, the front door was locked. The surveillance light was dark. Maya's property was on the counter, and Pike was fastening handcuffs around her wrists. What had begun as a voluntary report had become something else entirely, and Maya was beginning to understand that the photograph was not the only thing Deputy Pike was trying to make disappear. Pike did not answer Maya's final question. He simply took hold of her upper arm, turned her toward the secured hallway, and guided her away from the public counter while the handcuffs kept her wrists close behind her back. His grip was firm but controlled, the sort of pressure designed to remind a person who was deciding where she could stand and where she could go. Ellen remained behind the counter, watching with an expression she was trying unsuccessfully to keep neutral. Maya caught her eye before Pike pushed open the security door. "Miss Price," Maya said calmly, "please don't throw away whatever property record was created when they took my phone." Pike stopped walking. "You don't give instructions to my staff?" Maya turned her head just enough to look at him. "I didn't give her an instruction. I made a request in front of a witness. Mercer followed them into the hallway. You really don't know when to stop, do you? Maya looked back at him. Stopping would make what happened easier to rewrite. I don't see why I should help with that. For a moment, Mercer said nothing. Pike opened a holding room door and directed Maya inside. The room was small, with a fixed metal bench along one wall and a narrow, reinforced window facing the corridor. There was no dramatic struggle and no shouting. Maya sat when instructed, keeping her posture straight despite the awkward position of her cuffed hands. Mercer remained in the doorway. You came into my station, photographed an area connected to county security, refused to cooperate with a deputy, and disrupted my lobby. Now you're trying to turn every sentence into some kind of courtroom argument. Maya studied him carefully. I came into your station voluntarily to report something. Your deputy took my phone after I expressly limited consent. Then, your lobby camera was turned off before you arrested me. Those facts don't become different because you describe them with stronger words. Mercer's mouth tightened. You think you're smarter than everyone in this building? No. I think words mean things, Sheriff. Especially when they're going into a government record. That answer stayed with him as he closed the holding room door. If you feel for Maya, who remained calm and stood by the truth even after her rights were ignored and she was placed in handcuffs, please like this video. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because someone near you may be following Maya's story right alongside you. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the powerful stories coming next. Pike was waiting near the end of the hallway. Mercer lowered his voice. Where's the phone? In the workroom. Did you search it? Pike hesitated just long enough to give Mercer the answer. I checked the photograph. That isn't what I asked. Pike glanced toward the holding room. She photographed me near a restricted access road. I needed to know what else she had. Mercer stared at him. Did she give permission? She gave us the phone. She specifically said she wasn't consenting to a search. Pike's expression hardened. She also walked into a law enforcement building with pictures of restricted infrastructure. That still doesn't answer the question. Pike said nothing. Mercer had spent enough years questioning people to recognize avoidance when he heard it. What bothered him was that he was now hearing it from one of his own deputies. Show me what you did. They entered the workroom together. Maya's phone rested beside a county desktop computer, connected by a cable. The specialized signal-blocking pouch Mercer had used earlier lay open nearby. On the monitor was a utility window showing a failed connection attempt and several lines of technical data. Mercer pointed at the screen. What is that? Security software. Whose? I don't know. Pike moved the cursor and opened another window. The phone rejected the first connection, but I got access to a temporary image cache. Mercer looked at him sharply. You connected her phone to a county computer after she told you not to search it? I was trying to preserve evidence. Preserve it? By doing what? Pike did not answer immediately. Mercer stepped closer to the monitor. The photograph from the overlook was visible in a thumbnail folder. Pike opened it. The image showed him standing beside the county vehicle, with the contractor. The envelope was visible between them, as was the temporary access credential. Mercer's eyes moved from the screen to Pike. What was in the envelope? Documents. What documents? Contractor material. Then why does this look like something you didn't want photographed? Pike's face changed. You're taking her side now. I'm asking you a question. Pike exhaled through his nose and turned back toward the computer. I deleted the image from the local cache. Mercer froze. You did what? It was tied to a restricted credential. That wasn't your call. It was a security issue. Mercer leaned closer to the screen and noticed a message near the bottom of the connection window. Unauthorized access. Event recorded. What does that mean? Pike shrugged. Probably corporate encryption. Maybe government-issued security. Doesn't matter. Mercer read it again. You don't know that. It's a phone, Sheriff. No, Travis. It's a phone belonging to a woman who walked in here knowing exactly how to limit a digital search. And now the machine is telling you it recorded what you did. Pike's confidence slipped for the first time. He disconnected the cable. Almost immediately, another line appeared on the screen. Integrity event logged. Pike stared at it. Mercer did not like the sudden silence. What did you actually delete? The photograph. From the phone? From what I could access. Could she recover it? I don't know. Mercer's anger sharpened. Could somebody else recover it? Pike did not answer. In the holding room, Maya had no view of the workroom, but she could hear footsteps moving faster than before. Doors opened and closed. Voices lowered whenever someone passed her window. She waited until Mercer returned. He stood outside the holding room door, without opening it. Maya looked at him. Has my phone been searched? Mercer crossed his arms. We've already discussed that. No, I asked. You avoided answering. You're in custody now. That doesn't retroactively create consent. Mercer's expression shifted. Maya continued, before he could interrupt. If Deputy Pike connected my device to another computer, there will be a connection record. If he attempted access, there may be a device log. If he deleted something, there may be an integrity record showing the file existed before he touched it. Mercer said nothing. Maya watched his face carefully. Then she asked, did he delete the photograph? That question landed differently. Mercer's eyes betrayed him before his voice did. Maya leaned back against the wall. So he did. I didn't say that. You didn't need to. Mercer stepped closer to the door. You're making assumptions. No, Sheriff. I'm watching what happens every time I ask the one question you don't want to answer. He turned to leave. Maya stopped him with another sentence. If you intend to charge me with something connected to that photograph, decide whether your report says the image was evidence before or after your deputy tried to erase it. Those two versions lead to very different questions. Mercer looked back. For the first time since ordering the handcuffs, he did not look irritated. He looked uncertain. In the workroom, Pike was already typing. Mercer found him at the computer. What are you writing? The supplemental narrative. We don't have a supplemental narrative yet. We do if she was photographing a restricted corridor. She was standing at a public overlook. She photographed a protected access credential. By accident. You don't know that. Mercer stared at him. Neither do you. Pike stopped typing and turned in his chair. If we let her walk out now, she leaves with a story about an illegal search and a deputy deleting evidence. If she becomes the subject of a security investigation, everything we did becomes part of explaining why we acted. Mercer understood exactly what Pike was suggesting. Change the question. Make Maya defend why she had the photograph instead of making Pike explain why he deleted it. Mercer looked toward the hallway leading to the holding room. There was still time to stop. Instead, he asked, what charge would support that? Pike turned back to the keyboard. That was the moment the problem stopped being only Pike's. Mercer stood beside Pike's desk while the deputy scrolled through the county code, searching for language broad enough to support what they had already done. The glow from the monitor washed Pike's face in pale blue as he moved between disorderly conduct provisions, obstruction language, and regulations governing access near county facilities. None of this says taking a photograph from a public overlook is illegal, Mercer said. It doesn't have to say that exactly. Mercer looked at him. It does if that's what we're charging her with. Pike leaned back in his chair. We don't charge the photograph by itself. We charge the conduct around it. She photographed restricted access information, refused instructions, interfered when we tried to examine the device, and continued disrupting operations after being told to stop. She came here voluntarily. That doesn't mean she came here innocently. Mercer said nothing. The distinction bothered him because it sounded clever without sounding true. Pike opened the preliminary arrest narrative and began typing. He added a sentence describing Maya as increasingly confrontational during the property seizure, then another stating that she had attempted to interfere with the lawful examination of potential security-related evidence. Mercer read over his shoulder. She didn't touch you. I didn't say she did. She didn't stop you from taking the phone. She challenged every instruction. That's not the same thing. Pike turned toward him. Sheriff, if you want to release her and explain to federal counsel someday why we let somebody walk out after photographing a protected credential, go ahead. But if that picture goes anywhere, the first question won't be why I opened her phone. It'll be why this office did nothing after she brought it in. The word federal hung between them. Neither man knew whether anyone outside Hawthorne County had seen the image, or whether the strange security message on Maya's phone meant anything at all. Pike was using uncertainty the same way he used vague language in reports, as space to build the version he needed. Mercer rubbed one hand across his jaw. Print me something that gets her out of here without admitting anything. Pike's expression relaxed. I can do that. A few minutes later, Mercer entered the holding area carrying 2 sheets of paper on a clipboard. Pike remained just outside the door. Maya looked at the documents before she looked at Mercer. What are those? A way for everybody to go home. Mercer unlocked the door but left the handcuffs on her. He placed the clipboard beside her on the metal bench. You acknowledge that your conduct interfered with a county security inquiry. We reduce the arrest to a citation, return your personal property after processing, and you leave Hawthorne County. Maya read the first paragraph slowly. Mercer watched her eyes move across the page. You don't need to turn this into something bigger than it is, he said. Maya reached the middle of the second page and stopped. This sentence wasn't part of the reason you arrested me. Mercer did not ask which sentence. She read it aloud. Subject attempted to interfere with the lawful examination of evidence associated with a restricted security site. That reflects information we learned afterward. Maya raised her eyes. What information? The investigation is ongoing. What restricted site did I enter? Mercer's patience thinned. Nobody said you entered one. Then, what did I interfere with? You photographed material connected to one, from a public overlook. That's what you say? Maya almost smiled, though there was no humor in it. That's what the location says too. Mercer reached for the clipboard. Sign it or don't. Maya kept reading. Here you say I refused repeated lawful commands. Which commands? You were told to cooperate. That is not a command with a defined legal duty attached to it. You were told to stop interfering. With what specific act? Mercer's voice hardened. You think if you keep asking the same question differently, you'll somehow change the answer? No. I think if you keep avoiding it, you may eventually realize you don't have one. Pike shifted in the doorway. That attitude is exactly why you're sitting in here. Maya turned toward him. No, Deputy. I'm sitting in here because your sheriff decided my questions were easier to arrest than answer. Mercer snatched the clipboard from the bench. You want to spend the night making speeches? That can be arranged. I asked for an attorney. You'll get your call. I asked before you brought me a statement, admitting conduct that wasn't in the original arrest. Mercer paused. Maya continued, more quietly now. If I sign that document, your department gets a new timeline. The phone becomes security evidence before the search instead of private property searched before you decided what crime you wanted. Pike's face tightened. Mercer looked at him, then back at Maya. You're making accusations without knowing what happened in that workroom. Then tell me. We don't discuss internal procedures with detainees. I'm not asking about procedures. I'm asking whether Deputy Pike tried to delete the photograph. The holding area went completely still. Mercer's grip tightened around the clipboard. Maya watched both men. That reaction answers more than either of you intended. Pike stepped into the doorway. You don't know what I did. No, Maya said. But I know what modern secured devices do when someone connects them to an unauthorized system. They record events. Sometimes they create remote integrity logs. Sometimes they preserve a cryptographic fingerprint of a file before it changes. Pike tried to dismiss her with a laugh, but it came out too quickly. You expect us to believe your tourist phone is some kind of government evidence vault? Maya's expression remained unreadable. I didn't say that. Mercer studied her. Who are you? My name is on my driver's license. That isn't what I asked. Then perhaps you understand how frustrating it is when someone answers a different question. Pike took a step toward her, but Mercer raised a hand. Enough. Maya leaned back slightly against the wall. Sheriff, before you write another report, you should find out whether he successfully deleted what he was trying to delete. Mercer stared at her for several seconds. Then he turned and walked out. Pike followed him into the corridor. She's bluffing, he said under his breath. Mercer kept walking. You said the security notice didn't matter. It probably doesn't. Probably? Pike said nothing. They were halfway back to the workroom when an unfamiliar vehicle pulled into the front lot. Then another. Ellen looked through the glass entrance and straightened in her chair. Several men and women stepped out wearing plain business clothes. They moved with the coordinated efficiency of people who already knew why they were there. One woman reached the front entrance first and pulled on the handle. It did not open. Ellen glanced toward Pike. You locked the public doors? Pike moved toward the lobby. Before he reached them, someone outside held up federal credentials against the glass. Ellen's face changed. "Sheriff." Mercer came forward. Pike unlocked the entrance. The woman entered without wasting a word on introductions until the rest of her team was inside. She was in her mid-50s, composed, carrying a slim document case, and wearing the expression of someone who expected instructions to be followed the first time. She opened her credentials. Supervisory Special Agent Elena Grant, United States Secret Service. Mercer stared at her. Grant continued before he could speak. "Effective immediately. No digital evidence associated with this incident leaves this building. No relevant system is rebooted. No related record is altered. And nobody moves the seized device without documented authorization." Pike had gone completely still. Mercer finally found his voice. "What incident?" Grant looked directly at him. "The unauthorized access event your department triggered. For the first time since Maya had entered Hawthorne County, the sheriff's office fell silent for a reason that had nothing to do with Mercer's authority." Grant turned toward the secured hallway. "Where is the owner of the phone?" Mercer did not answer Grant immediately. His first instinct was to look toward Pike, and that small movement did not escape her attention. "She's in a holding room," Mercer said at last. "Is she under arrest?" "Yes." "For what?" Mercer's answer came more slowly. "Disorderly conduct and obstruction. There may also be a security-related matter under review." Grant gave no visible reaction. "Maybe. We're still determining the facts." "Then let's begin with the facts you already have." She handed her document case to another agent and turned toward the lobby. Two members of her team moved to the public counter, while another remained near the entrance. Their manner was controlled, almost ordinary, but the building had changed the moment they entered. Nobody raised a voice, yet every employee seemed suddenly aware of where they were standing and what they had touched. Grant looked at Ellen. "Ma'am, are you the civilian administrator working this desk?" "Yes." "Ellen Price." "Miss Price, I need the current property log, the visitor log, and any written entry relating to the woman in custody or the device taken from her." Ellen hesitated and glanced toward Mercer. Grant noticed. "I'm not asking you to disregard your sheriff. I'm asking that relevant records be preserved while we determine why a secured federal device generated a tamper notification from inside this building." The word federal changed the room. Mercer stepped closer. "You keep calling it a federal device. What exactly are we dealing with?" Grant turned to him. "First, I need 3 answers. Who physically seized the phone?" Pike spoke before Mercer could. "I did." "Who connected it to a computer?" Pike's shoulders tightened. "I did." Grant held his gaze. "Who authorized you to access its contents?" Pike opened his mouth, then looked at Mercer. Mercer said, "The phone contained material we believed could be connected to a restricted county security area." "That wasn't my question, Sheriff." Maya would have appreciated the phrasing. Grant repeated it without changing her tone. "Who authorized Deputy Pike to access the contents of the device?" Mercer answered, "I authorized the seizure." Grant waited. The silence forced him to finish. "I did not specifically authorize a digital search." Pike stepped in. "I was examining potential evidence." Grant turned toward him. "Did the owner consent?" "She surrendered the phone." "That is not the same question." Pike's expression hardened. "She put it on the counter." Grant nodded once. "Did she state any limitation on what you could search?" Nobody answered. Ellen looked down at her keyboard. Grant saw that too. "Miss Price?" Ellen swallowed. She said she did not consent to anyone searching her messages, applications, private files, settings, or deleted data. Pike gave her a sharp look. Ellen immediately returned her eyes to the screen. Grant turned back to Mercer. "Was that statement made before Deputy Pike took the device?" "Yes," Mercer admitted. "Good. Now we have a sequence." Pike folded his arms. "You're making this sound like we hacked into something. I connected a seized phone to a county workstation because it contained an image related to restricted access." Grant opened the slim file one of her agents had just handed her. "You connected a secured device to workstation HC, so 7. Pike's arms slowly unfolded. Grant continued. "The device rejected the connection. recorded an unauthorized access attempt, detected a subsequent deletion event, generated an integrity record, and transmitted a tamper alert through a protected federal security channel. Mercer stared at her. You already have all of that? We have enough to know the event occurred. Pike's voice became defensive. If something was deleted, that doesn't mean I deleted it. Grant looked at him. Was the phone in your possession when the event occurred? Yes. Was it connected to your workstation? Yes. Were you attempting to access its stored files? Pike hesitated. Grant closed the folder. That is why nobody in this building is touching the relevant systems until they are preserved. Mercer moved closer to her. You don't have authority to shut down my department. I haven't shut down your department. Grant's answer was immediate. Emergency calls continue. Deputies can perform their ordinary duties. Your jail operations continue. What you may not do is alter, delete, move, overwrite, or destroy records connected to an active federal security incident. She pointed toward the work area. That includes workstation logs, evidence records, body camera files, door access records, report histories, and the seized device. Mercer lowered his voice. And if I refuse? Grant met his stare without aggression. Then your refusal becomes part of the preservation record. That answer quieted him. Behind the counter, an agent began documenting the computers currently logged into the county network. Another asked Ellen to print the existing property entries before any further changes could be made. A third photographed the evidence intake station exactly as it stood. Pike shifted his weight. I need to finish my report. You may write a report, Grant said. You may not alter an existing version without the system retaining the original and the revision history. Pike's face changed. It was slight, but Mercer saw it. What's the problem? Mercer asked. Nothing. Grant looked between them. If nothing has been improperly changed, preservation protects everyone in this building. That sentence landed harder than an accusation. Mercer glanced toward the hallway where Maya was being held. Who is she? Grant did not answer. I asked you a question. I heard you. Is she Secret Service? No. White House. Grant's expression remained unreadable. Her employment is not relevant to the first question you need to answer. And what question is that? Whether your deputy searched and altered a device after its owner expressly refused consent. Mercer's irritation returned. She was photographing a security area. Then document the law she violated and the evidence supporting it. We're working on that. Grant paused. Sheriff, did that alleged security offense appear in the original basis for her arrest? Mercer did not answer quickly enough. Grant understood. So, that theory came later. Pike stepped forward. We learned more after she was detained. Then the records should show exactly when you learned it. Again, there was no threat in Grant's voice. That made the statement worse for Pike. Mercer finally said, I want to speak to the woman before this goes any further. You may speak to her subject to whatever rights attach to her custody. But first, I want the seized phone physically secured and its chain of custody documented from the moment Deputy Pike took possession. Ellen spoke quietly from behind the counter. Sheriff, there isn't a completed property number for it. Grant turned toward her. Mercer closed his eyes for half a second. Pike immediately said, I was going to enter it after examination. Grant's attention returned to him. You examined the device before formally entering it into evidence? Pike realized too late that he had answered the question. Nobody spoke. Then Grant said, Show me the workstation. Pike remained where he was. Deputy, he finally moved toward the secured door, and Grant followed with 2 agents. Mercer stayed behind long enough to look through the narrow, reinforced window of the holding area. Maya sat quietly on the metal bench, her hands no longer visible from his angle. She seemed almost unnaturally calm for someone whose arrest had just brought federal agents into his building. Pike returned a moment later and pulled Mercer aside before Grant could reach the workroom. His voice was barely above a whisper. If we let them make this about the phone, we're finished before we even explain why we took it. Mercer looked at him. What are you suggesting? We define what she was doing at that overlook before they define what we did in here. Mercer stared toward the federal agents moving through his station. For years, He had believed the person writing the report controlled the first version of the truth. Now, for the first time, someone outside Hawthorne County was preserving every version. Grant followed Pike into the workroom while one of her agents remained near the doorway and another began photographing the workstation exactly as it had been left. The phone sat disconnected beside the keyboard, its screen dark, while the open signal-blocking pouch lay nearby like an afterthought. "Don't touch anything," Grant said. Pike stopped beside the desk. "I wasn't going to." Grant looked at the cable still attached to the county computer. "You already did." Mercer entered behind them. Pike pointed toward the monitor. The device contained an image of a restricted access credential. "I had reason to believe it involved county security." Grant turned toward him. "Then show me where that concern appears in the first report." Pike hesitated. Mercer intervened. "The report is still being completed." "That isn't what I asked." Mercer's face hardened. "You seem fond of that phrase." "It saves time when people answer questions I didn't ask." Pike looked away. Grant's agent sat at a separate terminal and began preserving the existing report versions. After several moments, he looked toward Grant. "There's an initial narrative saved before the federal alert." Grant held out her hand. "Print it." The printer started behind them. Pike immediately said, "That version was preliminary." "Preliminary records are still records," Grant replied. The first page slid into the tray. Grant read silently. The original narrative described Maya as argumentative, uncooperative, and disruptive inside the public lobby. It referred to repeated instructions and alleged interference with station operations. There was no mention of a restricted security site, no allegation of unlawful surveillance, no claim that Maya had attempted to destroy evidence. Grant handed the report to Mercer. "When did the security theory begin?" "We learned additional information after she was detained." "What information?" Mercer looked toward Pike. Pike answered. "The credential in the photograph was tied to a restricted service corridor." Grant nodded. "That explains why the photograph may matter. It does not explain why the person who voluntarily brought it to you became a suspect." "She didn't just bring it in," Pike said. "She challenged every attempt to investigate it. She limited consent to search her personal device. She interfered with the examination." Grant's voice remained even. "How?" Pike did not have an answer ready. Mercer stepped between them. "We're not conducting an internal affairs interview in my workroom." "No," Grant said. "We're establishing what was known before records started changing." The distinction was clear enough that even Mercer stopped arguing. Pike folded his arms. "If you want the rest of the story, talk to her." Grant looked at him. "I intend to." Before she left the workroom, she turned to her agent. "Preserve every version of the arrest narrative, including autosaves." Pike's posture stiffened. Grant saw it. So did Mercer. Once they were alone in the hallway, Mercer caught Pike by the elbow and lowered his voice. "What aren't you telling me?" Pike pulled free. "Nothing. You said the photograph showed a restricted credential." "It does." "That doesn't explain the envelope." Pike's expression changed. Mercer noticed. "What was in it?" "Paperwork." "What kind?" "Contractor documents." "Then why did you delete the picture?" Pike looked toward the workroom door before answering. "Because if that credential got circulated online, we'd have a security problem. She came here instead of putting it online." Pike exhaled sharply. "Sheriff, pick a side." Mercer's voice dropped. "This isn't about sides. It is now." Pike leaned closer. "If those agents decide I accessed federal material without authorization, they're not going to care that she walked in here acting like she owned the place. We need a legitimate reason for treating the phone as evidence." "We had one. Not strong enough." Mercer stared at him. Pike continued. "She was photographing near a protected corridor. We can document that we believed she may have been conducting unauthorized surveillance. Once that concern existed, the phone became relevant." "You're talking about writing a reason after the search." "I'm talking about documenting the full context." Mercer recognized the language. It was the kind of phrase officials used when they wanted something to sound cleaner than it was. He should have stopped the conversation there. Instead, he asked, "Can you support it?" Pike nodded toward the report terminals. "I can support the concern." That answer was not the same thing, and Mercer knew it. In the holding room, Maya heard the lock turn. Grant entered first, followed by Mercer. Pike remained outside. Maya looked at Grant's credentials. Secret Service. Yes. Maya's expression did not change. Grant noticed that. You don't seem surprised. I'm surprised you're here. I'm not surprised someone eventually became interested in what happened to my phone. Mercer crossed his arms. You knew that device would trigger something. Maya looked at him. I knew. Unauthorized access to secured systems leaves records. I didn't know what your deputy would do after I told him not to search it. Grant pulled a chair closer but did not sit immediately. Miss Williams, I need to establish a few facts. Did you voluntarily come to this building? Yes. Why? To report what I photographed. Did you know Deputy Pike before today? No. Were you intentionally photographing him? No. He appeared in the background of a photograph I took from the overlook. Mercer interrupted. That's convenient. Maya turned toward him. It's also true. Grant continued. Did anyone tell you the overlook was restricted? No. Did you cross a barrier? No. Pass a warning sign? No. Receive an instruction to leave? No. Grant finally sat. When you surrendered your phone, what permission did you give? I allowed them to preserve the photograph. I explicitly refused consent to search messages, files, applications, settings, deleted data, or anything else beyond what I showed them. Grant looked toward Mercer. He did not dispute it. Maya continued. I also asked for a property receipt. I never received one. Mercer said. We were in the middle of processing it. You searched it before processing it. We're still determining what happened. Maya's gaze sharpened. No, Sheriff. You're determining what you want to call what happened. Mercer stepped closer. You photographed a security credential and then resisted our investigation. That may be more serious than you seem to understand. Grant turned toward him. What charge are you considering? Mercer hesitated. Pike answered from the doorway. Unauthorized surveillance of a protected access area, interference with a security investigation, obstruction, and possible manipulation of digital evidence. Maya stared at him for several seconds. Then she almost smiled. Possible manipulation of digital evidence? Pike did not respond. Maya looked at Grant. Was the deletion event recorded while the device was in their custody? Grant did not answer the evidentiary question directly. The event is being preserved. That's enough. Mercer frowned. Enough for what? Maya looked back at him. For me to know the new accusation was written backward. Pike's jaw tightened. Maya continued. I handed them a phone containing a photograph. They took control of it. Something on that device was deleted. Now they want to suggest I manipulated evidence while they possessed the phone. Mercer said, Nobody has charged you with that yet. Then Deputy Pike just announced an allegation before your investigation established it. Pike stepped forward. You're twisting words. No. I'm putting them in order. Grant looked between them. That was the problem now. Order. The order of events. The order of reports. The order in which suspicions appeared. Maya leaned back against the wall. If you're going to accuse me of photographing a protected area, identify the barrier I crossed. If you're going to accuse me of obstructing an investigation, identify the investigation that existed before I arrived. If you're going to accuse me of destroying evidence, explain how I did it after your deputy took the device from me. Neither Mercer nor Pike answered. Maya lowered her voice. And before anyone writes another sentence, I want counsel. Mercer looked at Grant. Grant simply said, That request should be documented. Pike's expression darkened. Mercer knew what the next hour would bring. Lawyers, preserved metadata, competing reports, and questions that could no longer be settled by writing a cleaner narrative after everyone went home. For the first time, the problem inside Hawthorne County was no longer whether Maya could prove what had happened. It was whether Mercer and Pike could keep their own records from proving it for her. Grant moved the questioning out of the holding area and back into the sheriff's workroom, where the preserved workstation sat untouched beneath the fluorescent lights. Maya remained in custody with counsel still pending, but the balance inside the building had already shifted. Mercer could feel it in the way his deputies stopped speaking casually when federal agents passed, and in the way Ellen now printed records before anyone asked twice. Grant placed 3 documents on the desk. the original arrest narrative, the device access report, and the incomplete property log. "Sheriff, I want to keep this simple," she said. "Who took the phone?" "Deputy Pike." "Who connected it to this workstation?" "Deputy Pike." "And who authorized access to the contents after Miss Williams expressly limited consent?" Mercer looked toward Pike. Pike answered for himself. "I believed the device contained evidence connected to a protected access area." Grant did not move. "That is a reason you now say you had." "I asked who authorized the search." Pike's jaw tightened. Mercer finally said, "No written search authorization was issued." "Any warrant?" "No." "Any documented emergency requiring immediate access to private data?" Mercer did not answer. Grant waited. "No," he said. "Any written consent?" "No." Grant nodded once and turned to one of her agents. "Add that to the preservation summary." Pike stepped forward. "You're treating a field decision like some kind of cyber intrusion." Grant looked at him. "A field decision leaves a record too." The agent at the secondary terminal rotated his screen. A sequence of system entries had been frozen and copied into a federal preservation file. None of the entries used dramatic language, but together they told a clean story. The phone had been connected to the county workstation. The device had rejected the connection. A second access attempt followed. A temporary cache had been opened. A deletion event occurred. The phone then generated an external integrity transmission. Pike stared at the entries. "That doesn't prove what was deleted." "No," Grant said. "It proves something was altered while the device was connected to your workstation. The recovery process will determine the rest." Mercer looked at the screen. "Recovery?" "The device generated integrity hashes before and after the event." Pike frowned. Meaning, if a file changed, we can usually identify that a change occurred even if the visible copy is gone." For the first time, Pike looked less defensive than alarmed. Mercer noticed. Grant continued, "Until that analysis is complete, nobody in this building touches the phone, the workstation, the related reports, the body camera files, or the property records without a documented reason." Mercer folded his arms. "You're freezing half my office." "No, I'm freezing one chain of evidence. My people still need to work. They can work. They just cannot rewrite this incident while we are trying to determine what happened." Pike let out a short breath. "Nobody is rewriting anything." Grant picked up the original report. "This version says, Miss Williams became argumentative in the lobby. She placed it down and lifted a later draft. This version adds restricted area surveillance. Then another. This one adds interference with evidence." She looked at Pike. "Those are material changes. We learned more. Then the record should show what you learned, when you learned it, and from whom." Pike said nothing. Grant turned toward Mercer. "That is why version history matters." Mercer had spent 14 years reading reports as finished products. The idea that every earlier draft could now be examined beside the final one made the room feel smaller. One of Grant's agents approached with a printed page. "Ma'am, we also have the lobby camera status." Pike's eyes shifted immediately toward him. Grant read the sheet. The camera was manually disabled before Miss Williams was placed in cuffs. Mercer looked at Pike. Pike answered quickly. The lobby camera had been malfunctioning. The agent spoke. "The system log records a manual command from the local control remote." Ellen looked up from behind the counter. Pike's expression hardened. Grant asked, "Who had that remote?" Ellen hesitated. Mercer saw the hesitation and said, "Answer her." "Deputy Pike had it." Pike turned toward Ellen. "You don't know that for certain." She met his eyes this time. "I watched you put it in your pocket." The room went quiet. Pike looked at Mercer. "That camera gets shut off for privacy all the time." Grant said, "Then there should be a policy authorizing it." "There is. Show me." Pike did not move. Grant's agent made another note. Mercer's patience snapped. "Enough. Travis, if there is a policy, get it." Pike remained still. Mercer's voice dropped. "Now." Pike walked toward the filing cabinet. Grant watched him search through several binders before finally pulling one loose. He flipped pages, slower each time. There was no provision authorizing a deputy to disable lobby surveillance, simply because a citizen was being detained. Grant did not need to say it. Mercer could read the page. From where he stood, he looked toward Pike with a different kind of anger now. You told me this was routine. It is routine. That doesn't make it policy. Pike closed the binder harder than necessary. From the hallway came the sound of the holding room door opening. A county employee escorted Maya toward an interview room while they waited for her attorney to arrive. Her handcuffs had been removed for the transfer, but she remained formally detained. As she passed the workroom, she saw the open policy binder, the printed camera log, and the federal agent at the workstation. Maya stopped just long enough to look at Mercer. Did you find the authorization? Mercer did not answer. Grant stepped into the doorway. Miss Williams, your counsel request has been documented. Someone is on the way. Thank you, Pike muttered. She doesn't need a running commentary. Maya looked at him. No, but I do need the record to stop, depending on your memory. Grant almost reacted, but not quite. Mercer heard the sentence differently. He had spent the afternoon believing Maya's questions were the source of the problem. Now every preserved record was beginning to show that the questions had only exposed it. Grant turned back toward the workroom. Sheriff, from this point forward, all relevant report revisions remain preserved in original form. No evidence room movement without a second signature. No deletion of body camera files. No changes to the property log without an audit trail. Mercer looked at her. And if we disagree, you can disagree in writing. Pike gave a bitter laugh. Grant did not look at him. That is what records are for. Before anyone could respond, the front desk phone rang. Ellen answered, listened for several seconds, then covered the receiver with her hand. Sheriff, there's an attorney asking for Maya Williams. Mercer looked toward the interview room. Grant closed the preservation file. Then the next part of this gets more formal. Daniel Reeves arrived carrying a worn leather briefcase in one hand and a yellow legal pad tucked beneath his arm. He was in his mid-60s, dressed in a dark suit that had seen enough courthouses to lose its stiffness, and he moved through the lobby without hurry. He gave Ellen his name, showed his bar identification, then waited while Mercer came forward. You representing Maya Williams? Mercer asked. I am now. Mercer glanced toward the interview room. She hasn't been formally charged with everything under review. Reeves gave him a measured look. That sentence usually means somebody is still deciding what to call what already happened. Mercer did not smile. She's being held on disorderly conduct and obstruction. Then I'd like to see the arrest basis, the booking record, and any supplemental allegations that existed before she requested counsel. Mercer folded his arms. You'll get what the law requires. That'll be a refreshing place to start. Grant stood several feet away and said nothing. Reeves noticed the Secret Service credentials on her belt, but did not ask about them yet. His first concern was Maya. He was taken into the interview room, where Maya sat at the table with a paper cup of water in front of her. She looked composed, though the tension around her eyes showed the day had begun to wear on her. Reeves closed the door and sat across from her. Oh, Miss Williams. Mr. Reeves, I was told you asked for counsel. I did. What happened? Maya paused before answering. The answer they're writing now is different from the answer they had when they put me in cuffs. Reeves studied her for a moment, then opened the legal pad. Good. That tells me where to start. Maya explained the overlook, the photograph, Pike's reaction, her voluntary visit to the sheriff's office, the seizure of her phone, and the limits she had placed on any search. She described the missing property receipt, the disabled lobby camera, the arrest, and the later suggestion that she had somehow interfered with a security investigation. Reeves did not interrupt except to clarify sequence. When did they first mention a restricted security site? After the phone had already been taken. When did they accuse you of interfering with digital evidence? After I was detained. Did anyone at the overlook tell you the location was restricted? No. Did you cross a barrier? No. Were you ordered to leave? No. Did you know Deputy Pike before today? No. Reeves wrote a final note and set down his pen. Then we don't waste time arguing about whether their new story sounds plausible. Maya nodded slightly. We establish when it was created. Reeves looked at her with renewed interest. Exactly. He leaned back. You've done this before. Maya's expression did not change. I've read enough bad records to know that timing matters. That's not what I asked. A faint trace of a smile crossed her face. Then perhaps we're both having the same kind of afternoon. Reeves let the point go. Fine. For now, I need to know what you want. Preservation first. Specifics? Maya answered without hesitation. The original arrest narrative and every revision. Lobby surveillance status logs. Body camera indexes. Dispatch records. Property intake records. Workstation. Access logs. User login history. Evidence room activity. Door access records. Any report showing when the restricted site theory first appeared. Reeves had stopped writing halfway through the list. He looked at her again. You want the revision history, not just the final reports. Yes. Why? Because if the original reason for an arrest changes after outside scrutiny begins, the change becomes part of the evidence. Reeves closed the legal pad. You're not an ordinary tourist. Maya met his eyes. Today, that should not matter. That answer told him more than a title would have. He stood. All right, I'll make the requests. When Reeves returned to the lobby, Mercer was speaking quietly with Pike near the workroom entrance. Grant stood by the federal preservation table, reviewing a printed system log. Reeves approached her first. Daniel Reeves, counsel for Maya Williams. Grant shook his hand. Supervisory Special Agent Elena Grant. I assume your presence is related to the phone. It is. I'm requesting preservation of all county records connected to my client's detention, the seizure of her device, the digital access event, and any report revisions made after the arrest. Grant nodded. Federal preservation is already underway for material connected to the security incident. I'd like my request documented independently. That's sensible. Mercer overheard. We're not destroying anything. Reeves turned toward him. Then preserving it shouldn't inconvenience you. Pike stepped forward. Counselor, your client photographed a protected access credential and interfered with our investigation. Reeves looked at him. When did that investigation begin? Pike hesitated. Reeves waited. Before or after you connected her phone to your workstation? Pike's expression sharpened. You don't know what happened. No, Reeves said. That's why I'm asking for the records. Mercer cut in. She could be facing additional charges. What? Charges. Unauthorized surveillance, interference with a security investigation, obstruction, possibly manipulation of digital evidence. Reeves glanced toward Grant. Manipulation by whom? Mercer said. That's under review. Reeves turned back to him. Was the device in county custody when the recorded deletion occurred? Grant answered carefully. The device was connected to a county workstation during the relevant event. The exact forensic sequence is being preserved. Reeves nodded. Then he looked at Mercer. So your department possessed the phone. Your deputy accessed it. A deletion event occurred. And now the owner may be accused of manipulating evidence? Mercer's voice hardened. Nobody said the accusation is final. Then don't let it become final before the records tell you whether it's possible. Pike took a step closer. You came in here already assuming we did something wrong. Reeves shook his head. I came in assuming everybody eventually remembers events in the version most favorable to themselves. That's why systems keep timestamps. Grant almost smiled. Reeves opened his briefcase and removed several printed preservation notices. He handed one to Mercer. One for your office. Another to Grant. One for the federal record. He placed a third on Ellen's counter. And one acknowledging service through administration. Ellen accepted it carefully. Mercer scanned the first page. You prepared this fast. Reeves picked up his briefcase. I've learned not to argue with a story when I can prove when the story was written. Behind him, a federal technician called Grant toward the preserved workstation. A recovered image had begun to load. Grant walked over. Mercer followed. Pike did not. For the first time since the lockdown began, he seemed afraid to look at the screen. The recovered image sharpened slowly on the federal technician's monitor, first as blocks of color, and then as a recognizable scene from the overlook. Grant stood beside the desk without speaking while Mercer leaned closer, his attention fixed on the lower portion of the photograph. Pike was clearly visible beside the county vehicle. So was the man in the utility shirt. Between them was the envelope. The temporary access credential could be seen in Pike's other hand. Mercer's expression changed. Zoom in. The technician enlarged the image. The envelope was partly open. Several folded bills were visible near the top. Mercer looked toward Pike. What exactly did you say was in that envelope? Pike remained several feet away. Contractor paperwork. Mercer pointed at the screen. That doesn't look like paperwork. You can't tell what's in an envelope from one picture. Grant spoke without raising her voice. We can tell that currency is visible. Pike's jaw tightened. Cash doesn't automatically mean a bribe. No one said it did. Grant shifted her attention to the credential. What about this? Pike answered more quickly. Temporary access pass. For whom? A contractor. Name? Pike hesitated. Mercer noticed. Grant waited. Finally, Pike said, Warren Cole. One of the agents at the adjoining table checked a printed list. Cole isn't on the approved contractor roster for the protected corridor. Pike looked at him. He works through a subcontractor. Which one? Pike did not answer. Grant continued. Were you authorized to transfer this credential to him? I was explaining how access worked. That wasn't the question. Pike stared at her. Mercer stepped forward. Answer it. Pike's expression hardened. No written authorization, if that's what you mean. Grant nodded. Then we'll preserve that statement too. Pike gave a short, humorless laugh. You people have already decided what this is. No, Grant said. That is exactly why we are preserving the evidence instead of letting anyone decide from memory. She pointed at the photograph. If the exchange is legitimate, records should support it. If it isn't, the same records will show that. Mercer kept looking at the image. The longer he stared, the worse it became. Maya had walked into his building with potential evidence against one of his deputies. Pike had recognized himself in the image, seized the phone, accessed it without clean authorization, and attempted to remove the photograph. Mercer had then arrested the person who brought it in. He looked at Pike. Why didn't you tell me you were the one in the photograph? Pike's eyes narrowed. I told you she photographed me. You told me she photographed a restricted credential. You never said the picture showed you taking cash. I wasn't taking a payoff. Then why delete it? Pike's voice rose slightly. Because she had an image of a protected access credential on a private device. She brought the device to us and challenged everything we tried to do. Mercer stared at him. For the first time, the explanation sounded less like law enforcement and more like fear. Pike lowered his voice. Sheriff, don't let them turn this into something it isn't. Mercer answered just as quietly. You're making it harder for me to know what it is. Grant closed the recovered image file and turned to one of her agents. Preserve the original reconstruction, the hash comparison, and the deletion sequence. Nobody modifies the working copy. Then she looked at Mercer. I need to speak with you and county counsel privately. Mercer glanced toward Pike. Grant added, without Deputy Pike. That landed heavily. A short time later, Mercer sat in his office with Grant and county counsel, Thomas Bell, a gray-haired attorney who had spent most of the evening looking increasingly uncomfortable. The door was closed. Mercer did not wait for Grant to begin. Who is Maya Williams? Grant rested a thin folder on her lap. You've asked that several times, and you've avoided answering. I avoided answering because her employment does not determine whether you had lawful cause to arrest her. Mercer leaned forward. But you know who she is. Yes. Bell looked between them. Grant continued. Maya Williams is Senior Federal Legal Counsel assigned to a confidential interagency protective security integrity review. Mercer said nothing. Grant let the information settle. She was traveling through the region as part of that work. Her device is configured to protect sensitive federal material and to report certain unauthorized access events. Mercer stared at her. That's why the phone sent the alert. Yes, and she never thought to mention any of this? Grant's expression remained calm. She was not required to present a federal title in order to ask whether your deputy had legal authority to search her phone. Mercer leaned back in his chair. She could have ended this in 5 seconds. Grant shook her head. No, Sheriff. She could have changed how you treated her in 5 seconds. Those are not the same thing. Bell lowered his eyes toward the legal pad in front of him. Mercer's face tightened. You're saying she just stood there and let us arrest her? I'm saying she asked you to identify the law you believed she had violated. She was argumentative. Grant's voice stayed even. Was she threatening? No. Violent? No. Did she damage property? No. Did she physically interfere with an officer? Mercer did not answer. Grant waited. No. Then her federal position is not your central problem. Mercer looked toward the closed office door. What is? The sequence. Grant counted the points without dramatizing them. She voluntarily entered your station. She showed your deputy a photograph. She limited consent to search her device. The device was accessed anyway. A deletion occurred. The property record was incomplete. The lobby camera was manually disabled. She was arrested. After federal preservation began, your department added more serious security allegations. Bell finally spoke. Sheriff, you need to release her. Mercer turned toward him. Bell continued. Release her. Preserve everything. And stop adding theories until we know what the evidence supports. Mercer looked at Grant. If I release her now, it looks like I'm admitting the arrest was wrong. Bell's frustration showed. That is not the question you should be asking. It's the question everyone in this county will ask. Grant said nothing. Bell leaned forward. Clay, this is no longer about whether people think you looked strong this afternoon. Mercer's eyes moved toward the window overlooking the work area, where Pike stood alone beside a desk while federal agents processed the records around him. For 14 years, Mercer had built his reputation on certainty. People called because he gave answers quickly. Deputies trusted him because he rarely second-guessed them in public. Releasing Maya now would mean admitting that his first judgment might have been wrong. Worse, it would mean admitting he had trusted Pike before he understood what Pike was protecting. Bell spoke again. Let her go. Mercer watched Pike through the glass for several more seconds. Then he shook his head. Not yet. Mercer returned to the workroom with a decision he had not yet admitted to himself was a decision. County Council had told him to release Maya, preserve the records, and stop adding theories. Grant had laid out the sequence in language too clean to misunderstand. Even the recovered photograph had begun turning Pike from a trusted deputy into a liability. Still, Mercer could not bring himself to open the holding room door and acknowledge that the afternoon had gone wrong. Pike was waiting near the report terminals. Well? He asked. Mercer looked toward the federal agents working across the room. She stays for now. Pike's shoulders loosened slightly. Good. Don't mistake that for me clearing you. I'm not. Mercer stepped closer. Then stop giving me reasons to wonder what else you haven't told me. Pike lowered his voice. Sheriff, if Williams is federal counsel, then this changes everything. No. Grant was very clear that it doesn't. It changes why she was here. We don't know why she was here. Exactly. Pike pulled a chair toward the terminal and opened the supplemental report. She comes into Hawthorne County carrying a hardened federal device, photographs a protected access credential, walks directly into our station, refuses to identify what she does for a living, then starts asking questions like she's building a case. You really think that's coincidence? Mercer wanted to reject the theory. Instead, he found himself looking for the part of it that might protect him. What are you suggesting? That she was already looking at us. She told Grant she didn't know you. She can say anything she wants. The federal agent backed her. Grant said Williams was assigned to an integrity review. What kind of integrity review? Of whom? Mercer did not answer. Pike leaned closer. If she came here as part of some federal operation, then the photograph wasn't random. The questions weren't random. The phone wasn't random. Maybe she wanted us to touch it. Mercer's eyes narrowed. That sounds like a convenient theory. It's no more convenient than them deciding every mistake we made proves corruption. Mercer looked toward the interview room where Reeves sat with Maya. The idea was weak, but it gave him something he desperately wanted. A version of events in which Hawthorne County had not created the crisis. A version in which the crisis had arrived already assembled. Put the concern in writing, Mercer said. Pike nodded. Not as a fact, Mercer added. As something requiring investigation. Pike began typing. The new language was careful. It described Maya's presence in the county as potentially connected to a federal review. It suggested her photography may have been deliberate. It raised the possibility that her actions inside the station were intended to test or provoke local procedures. Nothing in the report accused her directly of staging the encounter. It did something subtler. It made the possibility official. In the interview room, Reeves had received copies of the first preserved documents. He placed them in front of Maya one by one. "This is the earliest arrest narrative." Maya read it. Disruptive behavior. Repeated refusal to comply. Interference with normal station operations. No restricted corridor. No federal security theory. No allegation of digital manipulation. Reeves placed a second version beside it. This one came later. Maya scanned the added paragraphs. Unauthorized surveillance. Potential protected access concerns. Possible interference with security-related evidence. She looked up. They changed the nature of the arrest after Grant arrived. Not just the language, Reeves said. The purpose. He tapped the first report. "This says they arrested you because they thought you were difficult." Then the second. "This says they arrested you because they suspected a security offense." Maya leaned back. The first lie was emotional. The second one is administrative. Reeves nodded. And administrative lies are harder to kill because people confuse official language with proof. He showed her the version history produced by the county system before federal preservation froze further edits. The good news is that the software kept creation and revision records. Maya studied the entries. "So we don't have to prove what they were thinking when they wrote the new theory." "No. We prove." When they began saying it, Reeves allowed himself a small smile. Exactly. Outside, the evening had settled over Bellhaven, with staff unable to leave freely while the evidence preservation process continued. Ellen ordered food from the diner across the square. A delivery driver brought paper bags filled with meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, cornbread, and containers of peach cobbler. The ordinary smell of hot food filled the lobby while federal technicians preserved records that could end careers. Mercer ate almost nothing. His coffee had gone cold, and the styrofoam cup remained beside his desk untouched. Pike picked at a carton of mashed potatoes while continuing to revise his notes. Grant passed behind him. "What version are you working on?" "Supplemental narrative. Make sure the original remains intact." "It does." Grant stopped. "And make sure anything you learned after Miss Williams was detained is identified as later information." Pike looked up. "You think I don't know how to write a report?" "I think the report is now evidence too." She moved on. Pike watched her leave. Across the room, Mercer sat with his hands folded beneath his chin. He had spent years believing reports existed to explain decisions. Now, every report seemed to create another decision he would have to explain. Ellen returned to her desk after setting out the remaining food for staff. She adjusted her reading glasses and began checking the property log because Grant had asked for another printed copy. That was when she noticed Pike enter the records area carrying 2 sheets of paper. He looked toward the lobby before opening a file drawer. Ellen watched him remove a property intake form. Then, she saw the second sheet in his hand. Same case, same device, different entries. Pike slid one form into the folder and folded the other beneath his arm. For several seconds, Ellen did nothing. Then Pike looked up and saw her watching. Neither of them spoke. He closed the drawer slowly. Ellen lowered her eyes toward the computer as if she had noticed nothing. But beneath the counter, her hand had already reached for a yellow sticky note. She wrote down exactly which drawer Pike had opened. Ellen waited until Pike left the records area before she moved. She did not hurry. Hurrying would draw attention, and attention was the last thing she wanted. She adjusted the stack of papers on her desk, answered a routine question from one of Grant's agents, then carried a folder toward the records room as though she had simply remembered another task. The drawer Pike had opened was still unlocked. Ellen pulled it out carefully. Inside sat the property file for Maya's phone. The form on top looked clean, complete, and properly timed. It now showed the device entering official custody before any technical examination had taken place. Ellen knew that was not what she had seen earlier. She remembered Maya asking for a receipt. She remembered checking the system and finding no completed property number. She remembered Pike returning without the phone. The new form made all of those moments look as though they had happened differently. Ellen checked the wastebasket beside the filing cabinet. Nothing. Then she noticed a corner of white paper protruding behind a box of old supply forms on the lower shelf. She crouched, reached behind the box, and pulled out a folded sheet. It was the original intake page, the first version. Several fields were blank. The evidence number had not yet been assigned. The time of formal intake had not been completed. A handwritten notation indicated the phone had been physically taken by Pike before the evidence entry was finalized. Ellen stood very still. For years, she had watched officers fix spelling errors, rewrite unclear notes, and complete forms after a busy shift. Most corrections were harmless. Some were necessary. This was different. This was not a correction. It changed the sequence. Ellen folded the original form once and slipped it beneath a stack of routine administrative papers she was carrying. When she returned to the lobby, Pike was standing near Mercer's office. His eyes moved immediately to the papers in her hands. "You find something?" Ellen kept walking, just cleaning up records Grant's team asked for. Pike stepped into her path. "What records?" "Property documentation." His tone changed. "I already handled the Williams file." "I saw." For a moment, neither moved. Pike lowered his voice. "Ellen, don't make this something it isn't." She looked at him. "What is it?" "A corrected intake form." "Corrected for what?" "You know how paperwork gets done around here. Sometimes the first sheet is incomplete." "That isn't what I asked." The phrase came out before Ellen realized how closely it echoed Maya. Pike noticed too. His expression hardened. "The final form is accurate." Ellen tightened her grip on the stack. "Then there shouldn't be a problem keeping the first one." Pike stared at her. "You kept it?" She did not answer. His voice became quieter. "You've worked here a long time. Don't put yourself in the middle of something you don't understand." Ellen felt the warning clearly, even though Pike had not made a direct threat. Her job was here. Her health insurance was here. Her reputation was here. At 61, she had no interest in discovering how easy it would be for a sheriff's office to make an employee seem difficult, unreliable, or suddenly unnecessary. She looked down at the papers. Pike mistook the movement for surrender. "Just use the current form." Ellen lifted her eyes again. "I always keep originals until the file is closed." "That's not policy. It's my habit." Pike gave a small, cold smile. "Habits can change." Before Ellen could answer, Grant called from across the lobby. "Miss Price, when you have a moment, I need the next property log printout." Pike stepped aside. Ellen walked past him without another word. A short time later, Daniel Reeves came out of the interview room carrying his legal pad and stopped near the counter. "Miss Price?" Ellen looked toward Mercer's office, then toward Pike. Both men were occupied. She lowered her voice. "You asked earlier for the property records." "Yes. I may have something you should see." Reeves did not reach for it immediately. "Something original?" Ellen nodded. He glanced toward Grant, who was reviewing a set of digital logs with one of her agents. "Would you be willing to show it to both of us?" Ellen hesitated. Reeves noticed. "You don't have to decide anything beyond what you actually saw." "That's the problem," Ellen said. "I saw enough." She led Reeves to the edge of the administrative counter and removed the folded sheet from beneath the stack. Grant joined them moments later. Ellen placed the original form beside the replacement copy already printed from the file. Reeves compared the two. The difference was immediate. On the first form, the phone had been taken before a completed evidence number existed. On the second, the sequence had been cleaned up so the seizure appeared formally processed before Pike accessed the device. Grant looked at Ellen. "Where did this first version come from?" "It was behind a box in the records room." "Did you put it there?" "No." "Did you see who handled the file?" Ellen's eyes moved toward Pike. "Yes," Reeves asked gently. "Are you willing to say that in writing?" Ellen swallowed. For several seconds, the sounds of the building seemed unusually loud. A printer running, someone moving a chair, the low hum of the air conditioning. Finally, she nodded. "Yes." Grant took out an evidence sleeve. "I'm going to preserve the original exactly as it is." Ellen watched the paper slide inside. Reeves looked at the two forms again. Same phone, same incident. Different sequence. Ellen exhaled slowly. "Once the computer record changed, I figured paper might be the only thing in here nobody expected to have a memory." Reeves looked at her. "That may be the most useful thing anyone has said all evening." Grant sealed the sleeve and documented the transfer. Across the room, Pike saw what she was doing. His face lost color. Mercer noticed Pike's reaction and walked over. "What is it?" Grant held up the sealed original. "A property record that appears to predate the corrected version." Mercer looked at Ellen. You found this? Yes. Where? In the records room. Mercer turned toward Pike. Did you replace the intake form? Pike answered too quickly. I corrected it. After the federal preservation order? Pike hesitated. Grant stepped in. That is the question that matters. Mercer's expression hardened. Pike looked from Mercer to Grant, then to Ellen. What I did was complete. An incomplete record. Reeves spoke from beside the counter. Then the original should have remained attached to the file. Pike snapped. This isn't your office. No, Reeves said calmly. That's why your office's own paperwork matters. Mercer rubbed one hand across his face. The problem had changed again. First, it had been Maya's questions, then the phone, then the photograph. Now, even the department's paper records were contradicting the version Mercer had allowed himself to believe. Reeves returned to the interview room and placed a copy of the preserved original in front of Maya. She studied it carefully. Then she looked up. Do we know who was logged into the reporting system when the second version appeared? Reeves allowed a faint smile. That's exactly what I asked Grant. Grant's technicians did not need long to answer the question about the reporting system. The station software had preserved user credentials, automatic saves, and revision records even after Pike replaced the paper intake form. The digital trail was not dramatic, but its order was difficult to explain away. Grant spread the relevant pages across the conference table, while Mercer, Reeves, and County Counsel Bell stood around her. The first event we can verify is Miss Williams entering the station voluntarily, Grant said. The lobby system confirms that much, before the camera was disabled. After that, Deputy Pike takes possession of the phone. There is no completed evidence number at that point. She moved to the next page. The device is connected to Pike's workstation. The owner has already limited consent. The workstation attempts access anyway. A deletion event follows. Mercer looked toward Pike, who stood near the far wall with his arms crossed. Grant continued. After the phone is accessed, Miss Williams is detained. Only after the federal preservation response begins do the reports start referring to unlawful surveillance, interference with a protected corridor, and possible manipulation of digital evidence. Pike shook his head. You're making normal report development sound criminal. Reeves looked at him. Normal development adds facts. It doesn't invent an earlier reason for an arrest. We learned new information. Then the new information should explain what happened after you learned it. It shouldn't rewrite why you acted before you knew it. Pike turned toward Mercer. You see what they're doing? They're treating every correction like proof of a conspiracy. Mercer did not defend him. Grant tapped the printed revision history. This isn't about vocabulary. It's about event order. Your first report says one thing. The later report says something materially different. The system preserved both. Pike looked around the room and realized nobody was giving him the reaction he wanted. He changed direction. Fine. Then maybe we should talk about why Williams was here in the first place. Reeves's expression hardened slightly. Pike continued. She wasn't some random tourist. We know that now. She's federal counsel assigned to an integrity review. She arrives carrying a hardened device, photographs a protected credential, comes directly into a sheriff's office, and starts asking questions designed to lock us into legal positions. Maybe that wasn't accidental. Mercer looked at Grant. That's what I've been asking. Grant did not answer immediately. Pike pressed harder. What if she came here to test us? What if the whole thing was designed to see how local law enforcement would respond? Reeves said. That theory still doesn't explain why you deleted the photograph. It explains why the photograph existed. Maya's voice came from the doorway. No, Deputy. It gives you another story to tell after the first one stopped working. Everyone turned. Reeves had asked for Maya to be brought into the conference room once the evidence sequence was established. She entered without handcuffs now, though the county had not yet formally cleared her detention status. Pike looked at her. You expect us to believe you just happened to photograph me while you were working a federal security review? Maya took a seat beside Reeves. Yes, that's convenient. What would have been convenient, Maya said, would have been driving away and deciding your exchange was none of my business. Grant stepped in before Pike could respond. There is one point I can clarify. She looked toward Mercer and Bell. Miss Williams was traveling through the region as part of an interagency legal review concerning vulnerabilities in federal and local protective security coordination. Hawthorne County was not the subject of a corruption investigation. Deputy Pike was not identified in any pre-existing federal inquiry connected to her assignment. Mercer frowned. Then, why this county? The review involved multiple jurisdictions and procedures. Her presence near the overlook was consistent with that work, but the photograph of Pike's exchange was incidental. Pike gave a bitter laugh. So we're supposed to take the federal government's word that the federal lawyer wasn't targeting us. Grant's face remained calm. No. You're supposed to compare that statement to the evidence. There is no prior case file naming you, no surveillance request involving you, and no investigative directive targeting this department before Miss Williams entered your building. Pike's expression tightened. Grant continued. The first federal security incident involving your name was generated when you attempted unauthorized access to her phone. That ended the argument more effectively than shouting could have. Later, Reeves and Maya sat alone in the interview room with copies of the preserved sequence laid between them. We have enough to challenge every charge, Reeves said. The report history, the photograph, Ellen's original form, the access logs. We could make this public tonight and force Mercer's hand. Maya looked at the documents. No. Reeves studied her. You think we need more? I think publicity and preservation are two different things. He's already under preservation notice. For the records, Grant identified. Pike has shown he'll move from digital files to paper, then from one theory to another. If this widens, I want the entire evidentiary structure protected outside this building. Reeves leaned back. What are you proposing? Maya was quiet for a moment. There's a protocol I use in sensitive federal matters when evidence may exist across several agencies or jurisdictions. What kind of protocol? An evidence preservation cascade. Reeves's eyebrows rose slightly. That sounds more dramatic than I suspect it is. It's mostly notices, hashes, timestamps, and people receiving copies they can't pretend they never received. That made him smile, which means it's exactly the kind of thing that keeps lawyers awake. Maya pulled the recovered phone toward her, though it remained under federal control and Grant had authorized only limited access for the legal preservation process. Once authenticated, the workflow would send formal preservation notices to the relevant county, federal, and state offices. It would lock verified evidence hashes into independent storage, preserve the network logs already captured by Grant's team, timestamp the evidentiary index, and create an outside record showing exactly who had been notified. Reeves watched her prepare the framework. Why not trigger it now? Because Mercer still has one decision left that matters. You think he'll correct the record voluntarily? I think he deserves the chance to decide whether he's protecting the department or protecting what Pike did. And if he chooses Pike? Maya looked toward the closed door. Then the next change to a record won't be something he can call a misunderstanding. Reeves was silent for several seconds. What happens once you activate it? The evidence stops depending on what survives inside this building. He nodded slowly. And Mercer? Maya closed the secure file. After that, he won't be deciding what happened earlier. He'll be deciding what he knowingly does next. Mercer asked for the meeting before anyone else could force one on him. He chose his office instead of the conference room, perhaps because the space still belonged to him. The county seal hung behind his desk, framed photographs of community events lined one wall, and an old coffee maker sat on a side table beside a stack of unopened paper cups. The room looked exactly as it had at the beginning of the day, but nothing inside it felt familiar anymore. Maya entered with Daniel Reeves. County Counsel Thomas Bell was already seated near the window, his legal pad open but untouched. Mercer gestured toward the chairs. Sit down. Reeves remained standing for a moment. Is this a custodial interview? No. Then Miss Williams is here voluntarily? Mercer's expression tightened. She's here because I'm trying to resolve this. Maya sat. Reeves took the chair beside her. Mercer placed a short document on the desk and pushed it toward them. I'm offering a way to end this without turning Hawthorne County into a circus. Maya did not touch the paper. What are you offering? Immediate release. The disorderly conduct charge goes away. The obstruction charge goes away. Your property is returned once the federal team clears the device. We correct any administrative mistakes in the intake process, and everybody moves forward. Reeves looked at Bell. And the supplemental allegations? Bell answered carefully. Those would not be pursued. Maya finally picked up the document. She read the first page in silence. Mercer watched her as if he were waiting for relief. Instead, she turned to the second page. This says the county makes no admission concerning the legality of the digital examination. Mercer leaned back. We're not going to negotiate every sentence like this is federal court. Maya looked up. You searched my phone after I expressly limited consent. That is your interpretation. It's recorded in your own preserved sequence. Pike was not in the room, but his absence felt intentional. Mercer had finally reached a point where protecting him openly had become too expensive. Mercer said, "The phone contained potential security information. We had to act." Maya placed the document flat on the desk. You had to preserve a photograph. That is different from searching private contents. Mercer's patience showed. You want the charges dismissed or not? I want the record corrected. That is what I'm offering. No. You're offering to make parts of it disappear. Bell shifted in his chair. Maya pointed to the page. The original arrest stays. The supplemental report stays unless somebody explains why it was unsupported. The altered intake form becomes an administrative correction. The search becomes a disputed legal issue. Deputy Pike's attempt to delete the photograph becomes an internal matter. Mercer's tone cooled. Internal discipline is not your decision. No. But whether I agree to a document that helps hide the reason for it is. Reeves said nothing. Maya did not need him to speak for her. Mercer folded his hands. Miss Williams, you have spent the last several hours treating every mistake as evidence of corruption. I have not. That's exactly what you've done. No, Sheriff. Your deputy accepted money, transferred a restricted credential, seized the phone that recorded it, accessed the device without consent, tried to delete the image, replaced a property form, and helped create new allegations after federal agents arrived. I didn't turn those things into a pattern. They already were one. Mercer's face hardened. And you think I knew all of that? I think you knew enough to stop long before now. The room went still. Bell looked down at his legal pad. Mercer glanced toward him as if expecting help, but Bell remained silent. Maya continued, You knew I came into this building voluntarily. You knew the first arrest report had nothing about a federal security offense. You knew the phone was searched before the new theory appeared. You knew Pike's explanation kept changing. Then your own counsel told you to release me, and you chose not to. Mercer leaned forward. You think a sheriff can drop everything every time somebody challenges a deputy? No. I think a sheriff has to know the difference between backing his people and protecting their mistakes. That landed harder than Mercer expected. He looked toward the county seal behind his desk. For 14 years, people in this county have trusted this office. Maya's voice softened, but not enough to become sympathetic. Then don't ask me to help you protect the appearance of trust at the expense of the truth. Mercer looked back at her. You don't understand what happens if this becomes public. Every arrest Pike ever made gets questioned. Every defense attorney comes back through old cases. Every opponent I've ever had says this department was corrupt from the top down. Reeves spoke for the first time. That may happen whether Miss Williams signs this or not. Mercer turned toward him. You're supposed to be helping settle this. I am. Settlement requires both sides to know what they're actually settling. Mercer pointed at the agreement. She walks away with no charges. Reeves nodded. And the county walks away without saying why those charges disappeared. That's how compromises work. Maya pushed the document back across the desk. No. Mercer stared at her. You haven't even asked what else I'm willing to offer. I don't need money. I didn't say money. Then what? A public statement saying there were procedural misunderstandings. No fault assigned until review is complete. Maya gave a small shake of her head. Procedural misunderstanding is what you call a form filed in the wrong folder. It is not what you call deleting evidence and writing a stronger accusation afterward. Mercer's voice dropped. You are making it impossible for me to protect this department. Maya leaned forward slightly. Maybe that's the problem. You keep using the word department when you mean the decisions of two men. Mercer's expression changed. For a brief moment, the anger faded and something closer to fatigue replaced it. What do you want me to do? Maya answered immediately. Preserve every original record. Withdraw allegations that didn't exist at the time of the arrest. Separate Pike from any system containing disputed evidence. Turn over the original intake material. Correct the arrest record. Then, let an independent review decide the rest. Mercer let out a slow breath. That could end my career. It might. And that doesn't bother you? Maya looked at him steadily. This stopped being about what happens to your career when you started changing what happened to mine. Bell closed his eyes briefly. Mercer looked down at the unsigned agreement. You really think justice works that cleanly? Maya's answer came without hesitation. No. Justice is rarely clean. But compromise is when both sides surrender something they lawfully own. She pushed the document the final few inches toward him. The truth is not yours to trade. Mercer said nothing. Outside the office, Pike stood at the far end of the hallway, watching through the glass panel in the door. He could not hear the conversation, but he saw the agreement return to Mercer's side of the desk. He saw Mercer lower his head, and for the first time that night, Pike understood that the sheriff might stop protecting him before the records were finished speaking. Pike waited until Mercer left his office before making his move. He had spent most of the evening defending the sheriff's decisions, as though the two men stood on the same side of the same problem. That arrangement had worked while Mercer still believed protecting Pike meant protecting the department. Now Pike had watched Maya reject the settlement, and he could see something changing in Mercer's posture. The sheriff was beginning to calculate the cost of loyalty. Pike decided to calculate first. Supervisory Special Agent Grant was reviewing workstation records with one of her agents when Pike approached. I want to clarify my statement. Grant looked up. Which statement? The one about the search of Williams's phone. Grant closed the folder in front of her. Go ahead. Pike glanced toward Mercer's office. I didn't make that decision alone. Mercer had just entered the workroom and heard him. He stopped. Pike continued anyway. Sheriff Mercer authorized the seizure. He was present when Williams objected, and he told me to process the phone as evidence. Mercer walked toward them. I told you to preserve the photograph. Pike turned. You told me to take the phone. I did not tell you to connect it to a workstation. You didn't tell me not to. Mercer stared at him. She did. Grant remained silent, allowing the two men to continue. Pike pointed toward Mercer. You ordered the arrest too, because you told me she was interfering with an investigation. She was interfering. With what investigation, Travis? The one you invented after you deleted the picture? Pike's face tightened. I didn't invent anything. You changed the report. You approved the report. You replaced the property form. Because the first one was incomplete, you tried to get rid of the original. Pike's voice rose. And you knew there was a problem with the paperwork. Don't stand there now and act like I was operating alone. The workroom grew quiet. Several county employees looked down at their desks. Mercer lowered his voice. Everything you did after taking that phone was your decision. Pike gave him a cold smile. That's convenient. No. Convenient was you letting me believe this was about county security when it was really about that envelope. Pike stepped closer. You think handing me over saves you? Mercer said nothing. Pike continued. You locked the doors. You authorized the arrest. You let the supplemental charges move forward after Grant arrived. County council told you to release her, and you refused. If I go down, Sheriff, you don't get to rewrite yourself into the man who tried to stop me. Mercer's expression changed. Grant finally spoke. Both of you should understand something. I'm documenting this conversation. Pike looked at her. Good. Mercer did not share his confidence. Grant added, if either of you has information about who authorized a specific action, provide it separately and in writing. Do not coordinate your accounts. The word coordinate landed with unmistakable meaning. Pike walked away. Mercer watched him cross the room and disappear toward the administrative corridor. He's trying to protect himself, Mercer said. Grant looked at him. So are you. Mercer turned sharply. Grant's tone did not change. That isn't an accusation. It's a reason independent records matter. Pike entered the records area and found Mark Dalton, a 59-year-old administrative technician who handled evidence inventory when Ellen was away from the counter. Mark, I need your initials on something. Dalton looked up from his computer. What is it? A corrected property entry. Pike placed a form beside the keyboard. Dalton read it. The date line showed the phone formally entered into evidence before Pike had accessed it. Dalton frowned. I wasn't here when this happened. You don't need to say you were. You're confirming the form matches the system. Dalton read more carefully. The system doesn't show this time. It should. It doesn't. Pike leaned against the desk. Then we need the paperwork to reflect when custody actually began. Dalton pushed the form back. If custody began then, whoever took it can sign it. Pike's expression hardened. Mark, this isn't complicated. It became complicated when federal agents started copying everything. I'm asking you to fix a record. You're asking me to initial a time I didn't witness. Pike lowered his voice. Everybody in this building is going to remember who helped when this is over. Dalton met his eyes. So will the people reading the file. He slid the form farther away. No. Pike stood motionless for several seconds before taking it back. He did not realize Mercer was standing at the end of the corridor. The sheriff had heard enough. What was that? Pike turned. Nothing. Mercer walked closer. What did you ask him to sign? A corrected entry. After Grant told you no disputed record gets changed without documentation? I wasn't changing evidence. Dalton remained seated but spoke before Pike could continue. He wanted me to validate an intake time I couldn't verify. Mercer's face hardened. Pike looked at Dalton with open anger. Mercer stepped between them. Go back to the workroom. Pike laughed once. You giving me orders now so you can say you stopped me? I'm giving you an order because you're still touching records you've been warned not to touch. Then suspend me. Mercer did not answer. Pike saw the hesitation. There it is, he said. You still need me. Because the minute you cut me loose, everybody knows you believe them. He walked away before Mercer could respond. Grant approached from behind. You should restrict his access. Mercer rubbed a hand across his forehead. He's still a deputy. He is also directly involved in every disputed record we are preserving. I need to think. Grant looked toward the corridor Pike had just entered. Every minute you leave someone with access to disputed evidence is another minute you may eventually have to explain. Mercer met her eyes but offered no answer. Later, Reeves joined Maya near the interview room and told her what had happened. Pike is blaming Mercer. Mercer is blaming Pike. Pike just tried to get another employee to validate a backdated property entry. Maya absorbed that quietly. So the alliance is over. It was never really an alliance. What was it? Mutual protection. Reeves glanced toward the workroom, where Pike and Mercer now stood on opposite sides of the space. They've reached the point where each man needs the other one to be the liar. Maya looked toward Grant. That means it's time. Grant had reached the same conclusion. She called Mercer, Pike, County Counsel Bell, Reeves, and Maya into a closed evidence conference. Federal preservation staff would remain present. The question, Grant told them, would be narrow. Would Hawthorne County voluntarily preserve and surrender every disputed original record, or would it continue defending versions that no longer matched one another? Maya picked up the recovered phone under Grant's supervision and followed Reeves toward the conference room. The final confrontation would not happen in a courtroom. It would happen inside the same building where Mercer had first decided that a citizen asking for the law sounded too much like defiance. The conference room felt smaller with everyone inside it. Mercer sat at one end of the table with County Counsel Bell beside him, while Pike remained several chairs away, no longer close enough to suggest loyalty. Grant stood near the wall with two federal preservation agents, and Reeves sat beside Maya, who placed the recovered phone face down in front of her. Grant opened the meeting without ceremony. This is not a negotiation over reputation. It is a preservation conference. Hawthorne County needs to decide whether it will voluntarily preserve and surrender every disputed original record connected to Miss Williams's detention, the phone seizure, the digital access event, the altered property documentation, and the supplemental allegations. Mercer folded his hands. We've already cooperated. You have cooperated in part. We haven't destroyed anything. Grant looked at Pike, then at the sealed original intake sheet. That statement is broader than the evidence allows. Bell shifted in his chair. Clay, let her finish. Mercer leaned back. Grant continued. The federal team has preserved the workstation logs, the device integrity record, the report version history, the camera control log, and the reconstructed image. We also have the original property sheet recovered by Miss Price. What remains unresolved is whether the county will preserve and produce every original record voluntarily, including material Deputy Pike attempted to modify after preservation concerns were already known. Pike spoke first. You keep saying attempted like changing an incomplete form is automatically evidence tampering. Reeves looked at him. You replaced a form that showed one sequence with a form that showed a different one. I corrected it. Then why hide the original? I didn't hide anything. Mercer turned toward him. Travis, stop. Pike stared at Mercer, surprised by the tone. Maya had not spoken. That seemed to bother Mercer more than if she had challenged him immediately. He looked at her. You asked for this meeting too. Say what you came to say. Maya picked up her phone. I didn't ask for the meeting. I asked for the records to be preserved. Mercer's voice hardened. Same difference. No, Sheriff. That difference is why we're here. She unlocked the device under Grant's supervision and opened a secured audio file. Pike's posture changed. Mercer noticed. What is that? A recording. Pike immediately objected. Of what? Maya looked at him. Of the part you were hoping only memory would have to describe. Grant nodded for her to proceed. Maya pressed play. The room filled with the faint sounds of the sheriff's office from earlier that day. Footsteps. A door. Voices from the hallway. Then Pike's voice came through clearly. If we make the federal site charge stick, nobody cares why we took the phone. A pause followed. Then Mercer's voice. Write something I can defend. The recording stopped. Nobody moved. Bell looked at Mercer. Pike looked down at the table. Mercer's face flushed. But when he spoke, his voice remained controlled. That conversation is being taken out of context. Maya did not argue. Mercer continued. I was telling a deputy to document what we knew. Reeves asked. What did you know at that point? Mercer looked toward him. That she photographed a protected credential. After the phone had been searched. Mercer's jaw tightened. Reeves continued. After the deletion event. No answer. After the arrest. Still nothing. Pike leaned forward. You're acting like nobody here had a legitimate security concern. Maya looked at him. You may have had one eventually. That does not move it backward in time. Pike scoffed. You walked in carrying a federal device and refused to identify yourself. I identified myself by name. You hid your position. I did not owe you a federal title in exchange for lawful treatment. Mercer slapped one hand against the table. That's enough. The sound was sharp, but not violent. Grant did not react. Maya waited until the room settled. Then she placed the phone upright. A secure legal application was open on the screen. Mercer looked at it. What are you doing? Maya met his eyes. Giving you the last decision that still belongs to you. Bell looked toward Reeves. Reeves remained silent. Maya authenticated the application. A sequence of confirmations appeared on the screen. Grant's preservation agent received the first notification almost immediately. Then Bell's phone vibrated. A second federal terminal chimed. Maya explained in the same calm tone she had used all day. The evidence preservation cascade is now active. Formal notices have gone to the designated federal and state oversight recipients. The evidence hashes already captured by Agent Grant's team are being locked into independent storage. The county has formal notice through council, and every preserved network record connected to this incident is now indexed outside this building. Mercer stared at her. You did that without county authorization? Bell answered before Maya could. She doesn't need county authorization to issue preservation notices concerning federal material and anticipated legal claims. Mercer looked at Bell. Are those notices effective? Bell checked the message on his phone. Yes. Mercer turned to Grant. Are the outside records already locked? Yes. Pike leaned toward Mercer. Sheriff, don't give them anything. The sentence changed the room. Mercer slowly turned his head toward Pike. Pike continued. They want every file, every draft, every note. Once you hand that over, they'll turn normal mistakes into crimes. You know how this works. Mercer looked at him for a long moment. Maya spoke quietly. You have two choices now. Mercer turned back to her. You order preservation of every original record. You separate Deputy Pike from the systems connected to this case. You withdraw allegations the evidence does not support, and you cooperate with an independent review. And the second choice? You continue protecting the altered version. Mercer's expression hardened. Maya continued. Before tonight, you could still call some of these changes confusion, poor procedure, or bad judgment. After formal preservation notice, another deletion, another backdated entry, or another altered report becomes something you knowingly allowed after being told to preserve it. Bell looked directly at Mercer. She's right. Pike shook his head. This is coercion. Grant answered him. No. Coercion would be forcing the sheriff's decision. This documents the consequences of whatever decision he makes. Mercer pushed his chair back slightly. For 14 years, he had been the person others looked toward when a decision had to be made. He had built his reputation on certainty, on choosing quickly and standing behind his people. Now the deputy he had protected was asking him to protect a record Mercer no longer believed. He looked at Pike. You told me the envelope was paperwork. Pike said nothing. You told me disabling the camera was routine. No answer. You told me the phone search was necessary. Pike stared back. Mercer's voice became quieter. And every time the evidence changed, your explanation changed with it. Pike leaned forward. You approved everything. Mercer nodded once. That's the part I get to answer for. Then he turned toward Bell. Isolate the original reports. Bell picked up his pen. Mercer looked at Grant. Preserve all versions. Paper and digital. Pike stood. Clay. Mercer did not look at him. Remove Deputy Pike's system access. Pike froze. Sheriff, think about what you're doing. I should have done that when Grant first told me the records were in dispute. Pike's face changed from anger to disbelief. You're handing me over to save yourself. Mercer finally looked at him. No. I'm stopping the part where saving you requires me to keep lying to myself. Grant's agent entered a command on the preserved administrative console. Across the room, Pike's department credentials were disabled. His phone vibrated with a system notice. He tried to log into the county terminal out of instinct. Access denied. The sound was small. The meaning was not. Maya watched Mercer for several seconds before speaking. How many people sat in that holding room before me, without an outside record of what happened? Mercer looked toward the hallway. He had no answer. For the first time that night, Maya did not ask again. By the following morning, the sheriff's office no longer looked like a place recovering from a dramatic federal intervention. It looked like what it actually was, a government building trying to account for its own records. Grant's team had completed the first preservation phase. County systems were still operating, but every file connected to Maya's detention now existed in more than one place, with copies, hashes, and revision histories outside Hawthorne County's control. Pike had been removed from active duty pending investigation, and his access credentials remained disabled. Mercer had spent most of the night signing preservation acknowledgments and answering questions from county council. Maya had spent it waiting for the record to catch up with the truth. Reeves joined her near the public counter with a folder in his hand. They've withdrawn everything. Maya looked at him. Everything. Disorderly conduct. Obstruction. The supplemental security allegations. All of it. She took the folder. The first page stated that the county had found no sustainable basis to continue prosecution. The next page corrected the booking record. A separate memorandum noted that Maya's requests for legal clarification, refusal to consent to an expanded digital search, and insistence on documentation did not constitute criminal obstruction. Maya read the language twice. Reeves watched her. Well? She closed the folder. I don't need the record to say I won. I need it to stop saying they were right. Reeves nodded. That it does. Across the lobby, Ellen was helping a county investigator review the property documentation. The original intake sheet she had preserved had been placed in a clear evidence sleeve. Beside it sat Pike's replacement version. 2 pieces of paper. 2 different sequences. 1 incident. Ellen noticed Maya looking and walked over. They said the first form matters more than I thought. It matters because you kept it. Ellen gave a tired smile. I almost didn't. That's usually when it matters most. Ellen glanced toward Mercer's office. He's been asking for every old complaint involving verbal obstruction or disorderly conduct inside county buildings. Maya looked at her. That's a start. It's going to make people uncomfortable. Then they should read carefully. Ellen nodded. There was no triumph in either woman's expression. only the quiet recognition that the hardest part of institutional correction often came after the obvious crisis had ended. The formal review moved quickly from Pike's conduct to the policies that had allowed it to survive as long as it did. Investigators documented the chain in order. Pike accepted money from a private contractor, transferred a restricted credential without proper authorization, recognized Maya after she accidentally photographed the exchange, took possession of her phone, accessed it after she had explicitly limited consent, attempted to delete the image, failed to create a proper property record, participated in escalating the allegations against her, replaced the original intake form, and later tried to have another employee validate a time he could not verify. Each individual act had once been defended as a misunderstanding, a correction, a security judgment, or an administrative necessity. Together, they no longer looked accidental. Pike was referred for investigation into corruption, evidence tampering, and related misconduct. There was no dramatic arrest in the lobby and no public spectacle. His downfall arrived through preserved records. The same kind of paperwork he had trusted to protect him now made it almost impossible for him to control the story. Mercer's review was different. He had not taken the envelope or deleted the photograph, but the investigation found that he had authorized an arrest without identifying a specific unlawful act, allowed questions to be treated as obstruction, failed to stop the unauthorized digital search once warning signs appeared, permitted more serious allegations to develop after the original basis for detention had begun collapsing, and delayed restricting Pike's access even after evidence manipulation became possible. His final decision to preserve everything mattered. It did not erase the decisions that came before it. Several days later, Mercer announced that he would step down while the state review continued. He did not call himself a victim. He did not call himself a hero for cooperating. He simply acknowledged that public trust could not survive if the office asked citizens to accept standards its own leadership had ignored. Before Maya left Hawthorne County, she encountered him one final time in the lobby. No cameras were present. No reporters waited outside. Mercer looked older than he had when he ordered Pike to put her in handcuffs. I kept thinking that if I admitted the first mistake, people would stop trusting this department. Maya looked at him, and instead, he glanced toward the public counter. I gave them a reason not to. Mercer was quiet for a moment. Do you think the system worked? Maya considered the question before answering. Eventually, Mercer gave a small nod. Maya added, but only after everyone inside it had a chance to make it worse. He did not argue. Months later, Hawthorne County adopted new procedures. Words such as attitude, argumentative, disrespectful, and uncooperative tone could no longer independently establish disorderly conduct or obstruction. Officers had to identify a specific unlawful act. Digital devices taken into custody required immediate documentation and a numbered property receipt. Physical possession of a phone no longer implied consent to search its contents. Report revisions preserved their earlier versions permanently, and disputed evidence could trigger access restrictions before an internal review was complete. Civilian employees were also given a protected process for reporting discrepancies without relying solely on the same command structure involved in the disputed incident. The changes were not dramatic enough for national television. That was part of their value. One afternoon, Ellen sat behind the same public counter when a middle-aged man came in to ask about a device the department was temporarily holding in connection with an administrative matter. He did not understand the explanation the first time, so he asked again, then a third time. Ellen did not tell him to calm down. She reached beneath the counter, pulled out the written policy, and explained it more slowly. Then she handed him a numbered property receipt. The man still looked frustrated when he left, but he left free. A short time later, Maya returned to sign the final correction to her record. Behind Ellen's desk hung a new notice. Questions, disagreement, and requests for legal clarification do not by themselves constitute obstruction. Beside it was another notice explaining property receipts, digital device searches, and how citizens could request documentation. Maya read both before signing her name. Ellen looked at the completed form. Anything else, Miss Williams? Maya glanced toward the hallway leading to the holding rooms, then back toward the counter where the entire conflict had begun. No, ma'am. That covers it. She walked through the front doors without anyone following her. Nobody ordered her to stop. Nobody told her one more question would become a crime. Power did not always become dangerous through a dramatic command. Sometimes it began when a question irritated the wrong person, when a request became refusal, when refusal became obstruction, and when a report gave that version the authority of government language. Pike believed controlling the report meant controlling the truth. Mercer believed protecting the department meant protecting public trust. Both eventually learned the same lesson. Authority can control a room. It cannot safely control every copy of the record. The federal lockdown was the part people would remember, because it was sudden and visible. The real victory was quieter. A citizen asked a government employee the same question again, and the employee simply answered it. No handcuffs appeared. No one invented a charge. No important title was required. That was what justice looked like when it finally stopped depending on who was asking. The lesson from Maya's story is simple. Justice depends not only on laws, but on whether people are willing to question power when those laws are ignored. A badge, a title, or an official report can create authority, but they should never be allowed to replace the truth. Real accountability begins when someone preserves the facts, refuses to accept a convenient lie, and makes sure the next person is treated more fairly than the last. Thank you sincerely for staying with us and listening all the way to the end of this story. Your time and attention mean a great deal to this channel. We would also love to hear your thoughts. Did the way this story was told keep you engaged? Was there any part you felt should have been clearer, stronger, or more emotional? Your feedback helps us improve the way we tell these stories. And if you have a powerful, meaningful, or unusual story of your own that you believe deserves to be heard, please consider sharing it with the channel. Your experience may become the story that helps someone else feel seen, understood, or inspired. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.